Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're starting a 4-part series to learn loving kindness meditation. This is a meditation that's going to help you to eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance, the dislike, even resentfulness and negative self-talk that's in the mind. If you have negative self-talk where you're constantly degrading yourself, you're not having loving kindness for this being who you are now. As you cultivate loving kindness in your meditation and then learn to practice it in daily life, you'll have a much healthier relationship with yourself and all those around you. So I'd like to welcome you to today's class in the beginning of our 4-part series. I'm going to be sharing with you teachings of the Buddha so that you can see his words to understand loving kindness meditation, and then I will help you to learn how to do loving kindness meditation and more details on why you're actually doing loving kindness meditation. And then by the end of our class session today, we'll be doing a loving kindness meditation together. So thank you for joining. Look forward to sharing these teachings with you. And I'm just going to use some visual aids here to be able to help me share the teachings of the Buddha with you. So the first thing I'd like to do is just kind of refresh your memory on breathing mindfulness meditation and then talk to you about how loving kindness meditation fits into your overall meditation practice. We've already been learning in this group learning program during a 4-part series where you learned breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a foundational practice. This is the primary form of meditation that you're going to need in order to move the mind to enlightenment. This helps you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment while cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind and helping you to cultivate concentration or singleness of mind, focus, and clarity. This is an important meditation to build up. And if you've been practicing for the last 4 weeks of building up your breathing mindfulness meditation practice, you now may be ready to add in loving kindness meditation. Some people, they're ready for loving kindness meditation within 2 weeks. Some people maybe 4, 6, or 8. It's really up to you. But this is an ideal time to start learning and then start to understand how to bring in loving kindness meditation. As you're working with breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing generosity, along with all the other steps of the Eightfold Path, you're going to be bringing down your craving, desire, attachment. That's automatically going to help you have less anger, hatred, and ill will in the mind. But you need to specifically go in and work with loving kindness meditation to eradicate that fetter or taint or pollution of mind that we talked about on Sunday called ill will. Loving kindness meditation is kind of like a jackhammer, breaking up that mental object of ill will, so that as you're cultivating loving kindness in meditation, you're working to eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions. And you're working to cultivate the exact opposite, which is loving kindness for all beings. So this is your meditation practice of what you're building up to at this point in the group learning program. Let's talk about what loving kindness is so that you'll understand what it is as we get ready to start looking at the words of the Buddha and some other teachings related to how to actually do loving kindness meditation. Loving kindness, also referred to in the Pali language, which the original source teachings of the Buddha are in Pali, referred to as metta. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. It's a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well without judgment. You're not judging other beings to try to determine whether or not they deserve your loving kindness or not. By the time you fully cultivate loving kindness in the mind, you will have loving kindness for all beings. There's no beings that you're going to have anger, resentment, hostility, bitterness, animosity for. You're going to need to cultivate the mind in order to get to enlightenment, where you've eliminated and eradicated the fetter of ill will. And you'll do that through loving kindness meditation and then some other things that we'll talk about here in a moment. This is the antidote or wholesome root. It's the remedy to anger, hatred, ill will. This is what you'll learn when we get to chapter 8, when we talk about the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. Loving kindness is the antidote to this anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions. You're going to need to be cultivating it in meditation, but then you're going to need to go out into daily life and practice through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, the way that the Buddha teaches in the Eightfold Path, loving kindness. Because you're going to see in a moment when we talk about the words of the Buddha, and I share those with you, I'm going to remind you of in the Eightfold Path where he's referencing the loving kindness meditation and cultivating loving kindness and practicing it through your daily practice. This is going to eliminate the harshness, the bitterness, the hostility, and resentment from the mind so that you can eradicate those conditioned feelings and others, and the motivation of your unskillful conduct, because ill will is going to motivate unskillful conduct. And as long as you're putting unskillful conduct out into the world through your intention, speech, and actions, that's going to just keep coming back to you. So as long as you're sitting back and waiting for other people to change and hoping that people will be more loving and kind to you, that's not going to actually work. You've got to transform your mind away from the harshness, bitterness, hostility, and resentment, and start practicing in the world being more loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions, so that now that other people experiencing more love and kindness from you, then we'll start practicing that with you. So if you've been harsh and bitter and hostile and resentful in the past with animosity towards others, you're going to need to transform your mind for a consistent long-term period so that other people can start experiencing interactions with you where you're loving and kind, so that you can now transform your relationships and transform the way that you interact in the world. And this is going to take many months for you to transform your mind. And then as you're practicing more and more loving kindness in the world, then people will be more loving and kind with you. This loving kindness is also one of the Brahma Viharas. You're going to learn this in chapter 14 when we get to that in our group learning program. The Brahma Viharas are 4 healthy mental states: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are healthy mental states that are exactly opposites of certain defilements or certain feelings that are plaguing the unenlightened mind. And when you arise these healthy mental states in the mind, it will transform the mind towards these healthy mental states. And loving kindness is one of those. So practicing loving kindness meditation is very important for your development on the path to enlightenment. The Buddha talks about development of breathing mindfulness meditation is the highest priority, the highest wholesome gamma that you can be creating in terms of your life. And he talks about loving kindness being the second most highest priority and the second highest wholesome gamma that you can create in your life. Because as you're bringing down your craving, desire, attachment with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're going to be causing less and less harm in the world. And then more and more wholesomeness will come back to you. And the same thing with loving kindness meditation, that as you're bringing that down, that anger, hatred, and ill will, and you're arising this loving kindness, you're going to be more loving and kind in the world, being able to practice loving kindness and harmlessness in the world with beings around you. So by you causing less and less harm, then there's more and more wholesomeness that's coming back to you. So these are 2 top priorities for your practice of developing the mind towards the enlightened mental state. These are some of the ways that the Buddha is referencing loving kindness in the Eightfold Path. There's these ways and others that he uses in his own words to help you see why it's important to cultivate loving kindness meditation and then practice it so that you can then practice loving kindness in daily life. If you remember back to the Eightfold Path, when we talked about right intention, there was the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. This is the right thinking or the right thought or the right intentions. You need to cultivate this thinking or thoughts in the mind where, notice here he says the intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is the same thing as goodwill. It's a double negative. So if you're cultivating loving kindness, you're cultivating goodwill or non-ill will. And the same thing when you're cultivating the intention of harmlessness. By the time you fully cultivate loving kindness, you will be uninterested and incapable of causing harm to another being. You will have wisdom of how to ensure that you're not causing harm to others. So the intention of non-ill will and the intention of harmlessness is a practice as part of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching. It is the path to enlightenment. So how would you be able to practice the intention of non-ill will and harmlessness if you didn't have a tool and technique in order to cultivate that in the mind? So the Buddha is providing you a tool or a technique with loving kindness meditation to be able to then cultivate the right intentions that are going to then help you fill out the rest of the factors of the Eightfold Path. Then you look at the next step on the Eightfold Path, which is right speech. Well, in right speech, he gives 4 aspects of right speech. He talks about lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then he goes into more detail in other teachings, like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And if you remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, that is speaking at the right time, what you say is true, that it's gentle, beneficial, and it's spoken with a mind of loving kindness. Here he's sharing with you the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, that when you speak with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you won't be causing harm, so therefore wholesome results will come back to you. So speaking with a mind of loving kindness is needed in order to practice, based on the natural law of karma, speech that is harmless. The opposite of speaking with a mind of loving kindness would be to speak with a mind of inner hate. If you spoke with a mind of inner hate, that's going to come through in your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, and the way that you interact through your speech and all your other communication, whether it's text messages, social media, whether it's emails, or any other kind of interactions that you're having through communication. The loving kindness needs to come through in your communication. So by developing loving kindness meditation and then practicing it in daily life through your intentions and your speech, you will be able to then interact in the world in a way that's harmless. And even though I don't have it here, you can even look at right action where the Buddha is teaching to eliminate killing and living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, to not steal, to not have sexual misconduct. Your actions and ensuring that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions is also a practice of loving kindness. So this loving kindness meditation is going to strengthen the Eightfold Path and help you to practice it more and more closely. Then here's another teaching that the Buddha is sharing where he's talking with his ordained practitioners, and before this he's actually explaining to them the 5 factors of well-spoken speech: to speak at the right time, what you say is true, speaking gentle, speaking beneficial, and speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And in that teaching above this, he explains that not everybody is going to speak with you based on those 5 factors of well-spoken speech, that sometimes people are going to speak untimely, sometimes people are going to speak falsehoods, sometimes people are going to speak harsh, sometimes people are going to speak unbeneficially, sometimes people are going to speak to you with a mind of inner hate. Even when you're enlightened, people are going to speak with you in this way. And now, after the Buddha reminds his students to speak with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and not everyone is going to be speaking with you with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, he now shares this with them, that once these people are speaking in harsh ways and hateful ways, he says, "Herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected. and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness, and starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train monks. So here he's explaining that when other people are speaking with you in harsh and aggressive and hateful ways, to train your mind to remain unaffected. So breathing mindfulness meditation is going to help you with that, to reduce and eliminate your cravings. And loving kindness meditation is going to help you do that by reducing and eliminating your anger, hatred, and ill will, so you can remain unaffected. Because an enlightened being, by the time somebody gets to enlightenment, no matter what somebody says to them, they're going to remain unaffected. If it's harsh, if it's bitter, if it's hostile, they're going to remain unaffected. Now, they may choose to no longer associate with that person and move on, but they're not going to experience painful feelings in the mind, like sadness or anger, frustration or irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Those feelings and others can arise when you interact with people in the world and the mind is unenlightened. But by the time you liberate the mind with loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness, your mind won't be affected by what other people are doing in the world and how they're choosing to interact with you. Here's some more words from the Buddha on loving kindness meditation. Here he's teaching his son, Rahula. He says, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. So here it's very clear, it's very concise, it's very precise. This is the way that a Buddha speaks. They speak very clear, very concise, and very precise because their mind is very clear. You don't have to interpret their words. You don't have to figure out what he's saying. He's just explaining to cultivate loving kindness in order to eliminate and abandon the ill will. Your loving kindness meditation is to transform your mind. It's not to change other people. Sometimes people are confused and they think that loving kindness meditation is to change other people. But instead, you're working to improve and transform your own mind so that now when you go out in the world, you can practice being more loving and kind. You can't change other people through your meditation. It's impossible. If this was possible, there would be no such thing as prisons, murders, rapes, or anything like that. Because a bunch of people would get together, they would meditate, and then they would change other people through their meditation. This isn't possible. All you can do is transform your own mind through training the mind. So the Buddha is explaining to his son, Rahula, to use loving kindness meditation to eliminate the anger, hatred, ill will. And as I mentioned, those lesser versions that are coming from that pollution of mind, like frustration, annoyance, even dislike. You might be around somebody and just look at the way they look or hear the way they talk or anything like that, and you might have dislike towards that person. We tend to talk about this fetter, this pollution, in its extreme, like anger, hatred, and ill will, so you'll know what it means. But there's lesser versions of that. It's like a spectrum. So you can have this dislike towards somebody just for the way that they might look or the way they might talk. And this is all based on your cravings. Your mind is causing this itself. That person isn't causing you to hate them. Your mind has hate. Your mind has ill will. Your mind has this anger. And now these feelings of frustration and bitterness and animosity and dislike are arising. So when you dislike somebody, it's a reflection of what's going on in your mind. It's not a reflection of what's going on in other people's minds. And then he says here, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. Again, very clear, very concise, very precise. You don't need to interpret it or anything like that. Now here is another section of a discourse that the Buddha was sharing where he's talking to his students and he asked them, suppose they should ask, meaning suppose people should ask you, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason. Unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. So anybody who's unenlightened, they're going to have the anger, hatred, and ill will. If you're in the second stage of enlightenment or below, you're still going to have the ill will in the mind, the anger. So the reason why unarisen anger does not arise is because you're practicing loving kindness in order to train the mind and liberate it through meditation and practicing through your intention, speech, and actions. And any anger that has arisen, you can abandon that through loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in daily life. So once you're practicing loving kindness and you're accumulating the benefits and the loving kindness is permeating in the mind more and more, as you go out and about in your day and you're noticing any annoyance or dislike or frustration or irritability or anger or any of those types of feelings are arising, you can apply right effort to abandon that and now arise loving kindness because it's kind of fresh on tap. You filled up your gas tank with loving kindness meditation. It's fresh on tap. So now with your mind having more loving kindness in it, you can arise that in situations where you're observing the anger, hatred, and ill will in the mind or any of those lesser versions. But if you weren't practicing loving kindness meditation, you're not going to have loving kindness on tap. It's not going to be in your gas tank to be accessible to then arise in situations where you need it. Eventually, by the time you eliminate ill will from the mind will just always have loving kindness. It'll just always be permeating in the mind. But you're going to need to apply the right effort to build your mind up to that point where you're abandoning unwholesome qualities and arising wholesome qualities. So let me pause here and see if you guys have any questions before I go into talking about how to actually do loving kindness meditation. I would like to just see if you guys have any questions on what loving kindness is or any of the words that the Buddha shares. And then I'm going to explain to you how to do loving kindness meditation, and then we'll actually do it together. If you have questions, you can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. If you're in Zoom, you can either put that question in the comment section or raise your hand electronically, and I'll be able to call on you and allow you to ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and move into explaining to you guys how to do loving kindness meditation. So here, this is how we do loving kindness meditation. You should already know, if you've been studying with me, breathing mindfulness meditation, where we start with a chant and we ease the mind into meditation. Then we do breathing mindfulness meditation. Then we come out of breathing mindfulness meditation with a chant. So now we're going to essentially use the breathing mindfulness meditation to ease us into loving kindness meditation. So what we do is we start with a chant, and then we ease the mind into breathing mindfulness meditation for about 5 minutes or so. This is just helping you get aware of the breath, start to cut off anything that the mind is holding on to and bringing the mind back to the breath, and just kind of getting the mind ready and attentive for the loving kindness meditation. So you do about 5 minutes of breathing mindfulness meditation. Then when you're done that, you start moving into loving kindness meditation. The loving kindness meditation is where you're doing affirmations in the mind on the out breath. You're going to do, may I be peaceful. On the out breath, you're going to think this in the mind, may I be peaceful, meaning this being who you are now. And then may I be safe on the out breath. And then as you breathe in, you're going to say, may I be well. Inside the mind, may I be well. And then as you breathe in, on the out breath, you're going to use the fourth aspect of this phrase, which is, may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. So each time you do loving kindness meditation, you start with I, meaning this being who you are now. Then you go through successive rings, making the rings wider and wider and wider until you get to all beings, and you've encompassed every being in the entire world. these individual rings, you would like to customize them. Here, the visual aids that I'm just using the simple rings of may I be well, may we be well, may all beings be well, right? That's what I'm doing just as a simple structure. And this is the meditation we're going to do today, just as a way to get you familiar with the structure. But what you would like to do is you would like to customize this meditation based on your needs. So individuals that you have anger and hatred for, they need to show up in your meditation. So if you have a rough relationship with your parents, your siblings, your children, your life partner, your boss, your coworkers, your neighbors, anybody in your life, either currently in your life or in the past. Even if these people, you haven't seen them for 20 years and you'll never see them ever again. If your mind still is holding on to anger and hatred and ill will towards those beings, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment because your mind is holding on to this anger. This is like trying to harm somebody else with a hot coal. You're holding on to the hot coal, trying to burn somebody else, but it's just burning your own mind, right? So you need to be able to get rid of this anger, hatred, ill will. So even if people have died and you still have anger, hatred, and ill will for them, you need to be able to liberate the mind from that. So you create this customized rings to be able to then develop and cultivate loving kindness in the mind. 6 to 8 rings is about what is kind of normal. Once you get beyond that, it's kind of too many. So about 6 to 8 is kind of what you would like to look for. And then as you're cultivating the mind, some people like to start as after they do they like to go to some beings that they already have loving kindness for, to start kind of percolating the loving kindness in the mind, to start kind of bringing it up. So if you already have loving kindness for your mom or your dad or people like this, you might put them as the second ring in order to kind of cultivate the loving kindness and kind of maintain it and support it, not allowing it to fade away. And you might even go to a second ring of some individuals, either a person or a group of people that you already have loving kindness for. Then you might end up going to a ring or two of people that you feel more neutral about. And now that loving kindness from mom or dad or other people that you already have loving kindness for kind of bubbles over into this neutral group. And then that neutral group, from there you might add in some people that you do hate or that you do dislike or you have animosity towards. And now this loving kindness can kind of bubble over into those individuals. And then eventually you'd like to get to all beings where you haven't left anybody out whatsoever. And then after you've done all your rings, you would then like to go back to breathing mindfulness meditation for about 5 minutes or so. This is going to help you that if any anger bubbled up during your loving kindness meditation, you can cut it off and let it go and eliminate it. So you might decide to put a breathing mindfulness meditation on the back side. If you've already got loving kindness really permeating in your mind after the loving kindness meditation, no need to put that breathing mindfulness meditation on the back side. But if you need it, you can put it there. And that's the way I'll do it in our classes so you can experience what that's like. Then coming out of that breathing mindfulness meditation, you'll go back to chanting. So it's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich where in the middle is the real core of the sandwich, the loving kindness. And then on the outer edge, you've got the breathing mindfulness meditation and the chanting with the loving kindness in the middle. And you're going to do these successive rings where you're starting with I, and then you're gradually expanding out until you get to all beings. Again, today we're going to just do a simple meditation with just these 3 affirmations just to get you familiar with the structure of the meditation. But then over the course of the next week, you would like to then customize this so that you're inserting into there rings of individuals that you either currently have loving kindness for, that you're more neutral about, and then definitely people that you have anger, hatred, and ill will towards before you finally get to all beings. And you might decide to customize this meditation at different times. People might be moving in and out of your meditation based on what's going on in your mind. So let me give you some examples, and you're going to hear some examples over the course of the 4 sessions that we have. I'm going to be customizing the meditation for the group of us so that you can hear some different variations. So when I first started loving kindness meditation, I had a lot of resentment and anger towards my mom for things that happened during my childhood. So when I first started doing loving kindness meditation, I would do loving kindness meditation with my mom included. And then I would also do loving kindness meditation for myself because I had a lot of negative self-talk and self-hate for things that I did in my life. So I would oftentimes do, may I be peaceful, may I be safe, may I be well, may I be free of discontentedness in the suffering it causes. And then I would go to mom. And then it would be, may mom be peaceful, may mom be safe, may mom be well, may mom be free of discontentedness in the suffering it causes. And then ultimately all beings. And there was a lot of times where I would do myself and my mom more than one time. So I might do, may I be peaceful, safe, well, free of discontentedness. And then I would do myself again and again. And then I would do my mom. And I would do her 2-3 times, and then I would go to all beings, because these are the ones that I really needed to work on, so I focused on them first. And it took me a good 6 months to really wear down the anger and hatred and resentment I had towards my mom. But then I noticed my intention, speech, and actions being around my mom started to become more loving and kind, and we transformed our relationship. By the time she died, we had a very loving and wonderful relationship, that there was no harsh words between either one of us. But that wasn't always the case. So I needed to do the transformation first, and then as I was transforming and being more loving and kind, my mom slowly transformed. And then as I was doing that, then at that time I was a business owner. So there might have been a certain employee that I felt annoyed with, or maybe a customer, or one time the landlord of where I was renting one particular office did something that I had a lot of anger towards. So I put him in there. And there was even occasions where sometimes I was on my way to work and somebody would cut me off in traffic and I would get angry at that. Or maybe I wasn't sure if I was angry or not. And I would just include that person for 2, 3, 4 days just to be sure that I didn't allow the mind to hold on to any anger whatsoever. So getting rid of the anger, hatred, ill will in your mind and all those lesser versions, it's like wringing out a rag, like a wet rag. You're trying to wring out the water and get every single little drop of water out of this rag. So you would like to include individuals that you have this bitterness and hostility towards. And it's not going to be just one meditation and your mind's transformed. And it might not even be 5 meditations and your mind is transformed. Like you heard with my mom, my mind was holding on to a lot of anger. So it took me 6 months to really wear it away. When the Buddha talks about these fetters and pollutions, he explains that you're not going to know how much of the fetter you wear away each individual day, but when it's completely gone, you'll know that. So you need to stay dedicated, determined, and diligent to gradually wear away these fetters. And you're not going to know how much you wear away each individual day. But when it's completely gone, you'll know that. Because when ill will is gone out of the mind, it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. You haven't been angry with anybody at all. There's no anger arising in the mind whatsoever, and you'll know that it's completely gone. But you're not going to know each day how much you actually wear away. He describes this with an analogy of a digging tool. There's like a wooden handle, and he says if you dig with this tool repetitively each day, you're wearing away the wood on the handle of the digging tool, but you're not going to know how much of the wood you wear away each day. But when the handle's completely worn out, you're going to know that it's time to replace the handle. So the same thing is true about all of these fetters, that you're not going to know each day how much you wear away, but you need to stay dedicated, determined, and diligent to doing things like loving kindness meditation, and then practicing loving kindness in your intention, speech, and actions, and you can gradually wear away this ill will to the point where you have no more anger, no more frustration, not even the slightest annoyance or dislike towards another being in the mind. And this is where your mind is liberated from ill will, because now you can be loving and kind to everybody. There's oftentimes conditioning that the mind is holding on to based on where we've grown up in our culture. People might have taught you to be afraid of strangers and that strangers are bad. All that is that's just somebody you don't know yet, somebody you haven't met yet. And the way that the Buddha talks about living beings is he says it would be impossible for you to interact with a living being that hasn't previously been your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, or some other relative. So if you go around the world with the perspective that everybody's a stranger, they're an enemy, and they're out to get me, it's really easy to hold on to the ill will. But if you go out into the world having practiced loving kindness, meditation, and then practicing through your intention, speech, and actions loving kindness, and you change your perspective that people aren't strangers, they're just family members that you haven't met yet. And when you go out into the world thinking that way, then you can smile, you can be kind, you can be friendly. And of course, you need to practice discernment, right? If there's somebody standing on the street corner with a gun and they've got blood coming out of their face and they look like they're going to shoot somebody else, then you've got to have discernment, right? And you've got to make wise decisions about what's going on here. Is this someone who needs my help, or is this somebody who's trying to hurt other people? But by and large, you're not going to encounter people like that. You're just going to encounter regular average people in the world. So you can be loving and kind with every single being. And if other people choose to be harsh and hostile and aggressive, you can then train your mind to maintain your contentedness, maintain your joy, maintain your peacefulness, and just move on. Don't allow the mind to get painful feelings. Because whenever anybody's angered and hateful towards you, that's coming from their mind. You're not causing it. Their mind has that anger, hatred, and ill will. Of course, you should always look at your intentions, your speech, and your actions and see if there's anything you did that maybe led to the arising of ill will in a person's mind. But anytime somebody has anger, hatred, and ill will, it's coming from their cravings, it's coming from their anger, and it's coming from what we call ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. These are the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. So if you're being loving and kind, and this is the first time you've ever met this person, and now they're being hateful and vindictive and harsh with you, you might just choose to move on, no longer allowing the mind to have painful feelings, but just maintain your contentedness, knowing that you didn't cause their anger, hatred, and ill will. This is their mental object in their mind. And you should just have loving kindness towards them, even if you ignore them and you don't say anything, at least in your mind, have nothing but loving kindness towards them. So loving kindness meditation is essentially rewiring the mind. It's helping you to change your perspective of how you go out into the world. Because when you've gone out into the world in the unenlightened mind and people are bitter and harsh and hostile with you, you might have gone down this path of bitterness and harshness and hostility. It's a well-worn path. The grass is worn out, the branches are pushed back, the stickers are pushed back. This path of bitterness, hostility, and anger, it leads to broken relationships. It leads to hostility and animosity. And it doesn't feel good to have those feelings. You know where that leads. And your mind is wired that way as long as you have ill will in the mind. And what you're doing with loving kindness meditation is you're rewiring the mind. You're essentially creating this new path. You're getting out your machete and you're cutting down the branches, you're cutting down the bushes and the stickers, and it's going to be challenging because you might have erected a certain wall between you and other people, and you're trying to break down this wall, and you're trying to create this new path so that now when somebody's bitter and harsh, you don't go down this path of anger, hatred, and ill will. That goes to broken relationships. Instead, you can smile and you can go down this path, getting out your machete and creating more and more of this path of loving kindness that the mind will go down. And now over time, this old path gets overgrown. The branches grow back, the grass grows back, the stickers grow back. And now more and more, as the mind becomes more loving and kind through meditation and practicing through your intention, speech, and actions, the mind doesn't even look to go down that path anymore because it's overgrown. And you've got this well-worn path of loving kindness now that the mind can go down. So more and more, if you're practicing in this way, then you can develop your mind to be permeating with loving kindness. If you've been studying with me, you might have heard that I teach that you should develop your meditation practice to be 2 or 3 meditation sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. it's going to take 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 years to build up to that. And as you're building up to that, out of your 2 or 3 sessions, you would like at least one of them to be loving kindness meditation. Loving kindness meditation works really well when you do it in the morning, because you're going to go out into the day where you're going to be interacting with various beings. So if you can cultivate loving kindness in the morning as your morning session, now when you go out into the world in your day, you can be more loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. And maybe in the evening, you do just breathing mindfulness meditation. That would be a really wise way to structure your meditation. If you're going to get a third session in the middle of the day, it's up to you. If you feel like your mind is a bit agitated and annoyed and having anger, maybe you put in some loving kindness. If those things aren't really there, maybe you decide that you're having more difficulties with craving and you'd like to develop your mindfulness and concentration. Maybe your midday meditation becomes breathing mindfulness meditation. But if you do loving kindness meditation in the way that I teach, the breathing mindfulness meditation becomes the first part of this that you do for 5 minutes. Then you do the loving kindness, then you do the breathing mindfulness. So you've got some breathing mindfulness in there to help you and support you. So you might even decide, if you have a lot of difficulties with anger and hatred, that you might do 2 or 3 sessions of loving kindness meditation as you're trying to ramp up your loving kindness in the mind. And this will bring down the anger, hatred, and ill will. So let me know what questions you guys have before we start our meditation here. After this question period, I'm going to go ahead and guide you guys in a breathing mindfulness meditation and a loving kindness meditation with chanting before and after, so that you can see how this is structured. And then you can be practicing this on your own over the coming week. And then we'll reconvene in another week and I'll see what questions you have and help you with any clarification that you need. So you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. I see Francis has a question here in Zoom. It says, it is advisable to visualize the person when we radiate metta towards. So if you would like to use visualization techniques, you surely can. When I used to do this for my mom, I would envision my mom as sitting in front of me and that there was a syrup running over her head and kind of enveloping her. And you can see the words of the Buddha where he talks about enveloping somebody in loving kindness. So that visualization can really help. So loving kindness meditation is very different than breathing mindfulness. Breathing mindfulness, you're cutting things off and bringing the mind back to the breath. With loving kindness, you're inducing thoughts in the mind. You're inducing these thoughts of loving kindness and bringing that up in the mind to rewire the mind. So yes, you can use visualization to help you during your meditation. I encourage people to think these affirmations on the out breath, because that's going to help you think about this outward motion of practicing loving kindness through your intention, speech, and actions. But always remember that the loving kindness meditation is to transform your mind. So you're not really sending loving kindness to other people or radiating it towards other person. Like you're trying to cultivate it in your mind. And yes, if you would like to think of it as you're sending it to them, you could, but just understand that you're not changing them, you're changing your mind. So that now when you're in conversations with them or you're interacting with those people, you can be more loving and kind. So like I did with my mom, or like I did with employees or customers, if I had some anger in the mind or some annoyance in the mind, I could wear that away with loving kindness meditation. And then when I interacted with them the next time, I could be loving and kind and our relationship wouldn't get damaged. Because if you're bitter and hostile and having animosity towards people, and that comes through in your intention, speech, and actions, now you're going to damage your relationship. And now that's unwholesome karma that you have to deal with coming back to you. Great question there, Francis. We have some questions here coming in on YouTube. Bruce is asking, when it comes to a group like coworkers where there is ill will for some, but not all, should I focus on only the ones that there is ill will for to really work on the difficulties I am having? Or should I do the coworkers as a group, including the ones I am not having ill will towards? You can do it both ways or either way, Bruce, that if you would like to do it as a group because you would like to maintain the loving kindness for the people that you have loving kindness for, wear away the ill will for the ones you don't have loving kindness for, you can do it as a group. But then also, if there's individuals that you are having anger and hatred and ill will towards, you can put those in there as well as individuals. And this is where your meditation is going to have to be customized, right? If you're only doing 6 or 8 rings, you're going to need to pick and choose over a period of time, what are the ones you would like to cultivate and train your mind on first. So if somebody has 10 or 20 or 50 people that they have this animosity or bitterness towards, they're going to have to, select down a few people, maybe do that for several weeks or several months, wear away the anger and ill will, and then bring in the others. So I would say some people might approach it where if they have less ill will for a group of people or an individual, to include those in your meditation for the first few weeks, because that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit. There's not very much anger there, and it can be worn away pretty easily. Somebody might take that approach, or somebody might take the approach of, you know what, I have a really difficult relationship with my mom. This is a very impactful relationship. I interact with my mom quite often, and I would like to address this very early on. So somebody can customize this based on their needs. So you could do it either way, Bruce, as a group or individuals, and you might find yourself in some cases doing it both ways. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere in our platforms. So in that case, let's go ahead and transition over to loving kindness meditation, where I'll guide you guys in a loving kindness meditation session. The loving kindness meditation can be done in the seated, lying, or standing positions. We don't typically do this one in the walking position, so either seated, lying, or standing. If you would like to take a position, you can do that, and then I will guide you from there. Okay, so the seated position, if you're doing that one, it's cross leg. If you're on the floor, probably with some cushions under your rear to get your rear up in the air, lessening the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. If you're in a chair, you might just have your feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. The lower body should be relaxed. It's up to you whether you sit on the floor or in a chair or some other device. If you're using the hand positioning that the Buddha used, he put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and you could use that and then put that in your lap if you like. But not everybody's going to find that comfortable. So you might decide to put your palms on your thighs or on your knees or your palms up. If you're in a chair with armrest, you might even decide to put your arms on the armrest of the chair. You'd like your lower body and the hands and arms to be relaxed and comfortable. You're not interested in it being luxurious or painful, but in the middle where it's relaxed and comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. I'm going to do some chanting in order to ease us into meditation. If you know these chants, you're more than welcome to chant along. And then afterwards, I'll come in with some guidance on breathing mindfulness meditation. Then there'll be a period of time of quiet. Then I'll come in with some guidance on loving kindness meditation before we go back to breathing mindfulness and then come out with some more chanting. I'm just going to give some very light guidance on breathing mindfulness meditation. So if you've been practicing breathing mindfulness meditation with me, you may not even need that guidance, but I'm just going to do some very light guidance since we're doing a short session of breathing mindfulness meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Bhutang Mahakewanhang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami. นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body, hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. So wherever you get to the next inhale, just breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural breath. Once the breath is established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just wherever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll come back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. May we be peaceful. May we be safe. May we be well. May we be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. May all beings be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะพุทธังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ All right, if you guys would like to ease your way out of meditation, what I'm going to do with the remaining time that we have left available to us is just open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to loving kindness meditation. Remember that this is just a very basic meditation just to get you started with meditation, doing loving kindness meditation. Each session hereafter, I'm going to be customizing this and adding more rings. But on the first session, I usually like to help students just get the basic structure of the loving kindness meditation and then invite you to customize it based on your specific needs. So if you have any questions related to this prior to us ending class that you can now go off and start practicing it on your own, let me know, and then I will be able to answer any questions that you have. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. All right, looks like we have some questions here from Bruce. Bruce is asking, I feel as though I'm still strongly struggling with the concept of self. Even though I intellectually understand non-self, I still notice that the wrong view of self hinders my interactions. With others, should I also do the meditation on realizing non-self? I feel like I will be juggling too many balls at one time with breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness to also do a third one. So this is where you'll have to look at your practice, Bruce, and make the best decision for you. It sounds like you would rather just focus on breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness, and if that's where you're at, then go for it. That sounds like what you're essentially coming to the conclusion on. You don't need me to kind of determine that for you because this is your own independent journey and you're already looks like you're coming to a conclusion on your own. So if that's what you feel like you would like to do, then go ahead and focus on breathing mindfulness and loving kindness and get that really well built up. There's going to be time for you to work on eliminating personal existence view as you get to that. If you're struggling with understanding it and you need some personal guidance, you're always welcome to schedule personal guidance, and then I can help you, because I can be asking you questions and we can kind of be interacting in a way, and I can see and uncover where is it that you're missing your understanding and you're having difficulty seeing it with clarity. So that's what I would suggest. If you've already studied the books, I know you've been coming to classes and things like that. If you need help to understand that intellectually more, then feel free to reach out and schedule an appointment, and then we can talk and I'll ask you questions to help clarify that. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So what I'll do then is just thank all of you guys for spending time to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha, and encourage you to build up your loving kindness meditation practice. You're going to need this. Breathing mindfulness and loving kindness are the two primary forms of meditation that's important for you to develop. So work on that. And then remember that our future classes are coming up on Sunday and Wednesday as we rotate throughout the schedule. On this Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 1 of the book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. We're going to be starting from the very beginning of this book, and now we're going to be going chapter by chapter each Sunday. And then on Wednesdays, I'm going to be doing these 4-part series. First, I did breathing mindfulness. Now we're doing loving kindness. Then we're going to do a 4-part series on Buddhist chanting. And then by the time we're done with that, we're just going to be rotating between breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. So I encourage you to work on your breathing mindfulness meditation, your loving kindness meditation, reading the book for chapter 1, and then coming to class on Sunday for chapter 1 and to learn from that. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to post those in the Facebook group, ask in online classes or in-person classes. You can send private messages or schedule personal guidance with me. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you in one of these future classes. Be well. Sawadee Kap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.